Hello and welcome to another episode of Dance Teachers Academy. I am your host, Jose on the mic, and with me, as always, is the lovely, amazing dancer, May. How are you doing, love?
I'm great today.
You're way over there on the other side of the yeah. Everybody wave at May. She's kind of far away. It's a long-distance relationship we have going on. As you can see, we have a full house here today. We're getting back at this small series I have worked on. Mr. Jim Weber, how are you doing, sir?
Terrific, thanks.
All right.
Friend of the show, Jim Weber.
Friend of the show, Jim Weber, absolutely. The lovely Trish is here. Yay. And the man who is so famous he only needs two letters, the infamous JJ. How are you doing, brother? Well, welcome to the show.
Yeah, today we're going to talk about progressive country.
Yeah, this is, like I said, this has been an ongoing thing here, so I'm kind of curious, where this is going to go, because we finally I kept hearing your name, your letters all this time. It's kind of hard to hear a name when it's only JJ. I'm like, so I was
the world famous JJ.
The world famous, two-letter JJ. I wanted to know where this thing was going, and I'm glad you're here finally, so that I can hear not so much your side of the story, but how all this whole thing got going on your side.
Yeah, we're going to have Jim Weber captain the ship today with
he
his
will
questions.
Be.
We're talking about progressive country, and off you go.
Well, thank you very.
Before you do,
there we go.
Where did JJ come from?
Okay, you asked the
35 years ago, Jerry Long called me Double J. Double J! And so everybody picked it up as JJ. Until that time, I was Joe. So thanks to Gary, they called me JJ.
Oh, so there it is.
Yeah.
So his name is Joe Jackson.
Right.
Okay, well, that makes sense.
And I have shoes. I can't sing. So none of those guys.
Yeah.
And if you Google JJ, you come up with a blues singer, I find, most of the time. But
I didn't mean to interrupt.
no, that's all of this.
That's great.
All of this is great, kind of historical information. Exactly what I think this is all about. My first couple questions go back to the start. We were just talking about one of the first questions I was going to ask off mic before we started, and that was, how did you get your start in dance? And how does that relate to the word rodeo?
A friend of mine and we were double dating, going over to Fort Worth for the Fort Worth Stock Show. And the lady that he had invited wanted to stop along the way there in Fort Worth. There was a dance competition going on, push competition. And we went there and we saw this dance. And
Push being the West Coast?
It's a Texas version of the swing, except with a rock coaster versus a swing coaster.
Okay, there we go.
And I was introduced to Patty Pickens. You may not remember her, but you may remember Patty.
I don't remember the name.
And she invited me out to lessons, and I said, okay, but I never went. But it stirred interest, if you will. But I used to hang out at a club called No War But Texas, and my dancing was belly rubbing to slow songs. Rayburn and Mary
The
Wright.
Y dance. We call that the Y dance.
Okay, yeah.
Y dance.
Right. I get it right.
Yeah. Rayburn and Mary Wright taught dance lessons there, and we would hang out there during the dance lessons, and the DJ booth was right next to the ladies' room. And the ladies would have to stand in line. There was never enough toilets, so the ladies stand in line, so we would flirt with them as they were standing in line, And this one, she came like the second time around, and I asked her if she'd like to dance. She said, "Can you dance?" I said, "Absolutely." And so she finished using the restroom. She came out, got me by the hand. We went on the dance floor, and by the time we got to the next gate, she stopped, walked off. I said, "Where are you going?" She said, "You can't dance." And I said, "Well, I'm dancing." She said, "I don't know what you call that, but that's not dancing." So my buddies over near the DJ booth, they're all hooting and hollering and making fun of me, and the DJ made a joke out of it and everything. It embarrassed me a little bit. But that was my first kind of exposure of dancing, if you will. But I would go to those lessons, and
with the instant feedback, no less.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a guy sitting over by the pool tables drinking these little cigarillo cigarettes.
Yes, I remember those.
Jim Bunch.
Oh, of course.
And I asked people, I said, "Who's that guy?" Because he's always surrounded by a lot of ladies, and I'm like, I don't know if he's rich or enhanced or whatever, So I went over and I
girls dig a cigarillo, man. Come on.
Because someone told me he was a dance instructor, and I said, "Can you teach me to dance?" And he looked at me, he took a puff off his little cigarillo. He says, "Can you walk?" I'm like, Yeah. He said, well, then I can teach you the dance. And I said, well, I want to be a good dancer. And he says, okay. I said, no, you don't understand. I want to be a great dancer. And he says, you don't have what it takes to be a great dancer. And I took that as I didn't have the ability. And what he meant was I wasn't willing to do what it took
to get there.
Time and effort you put in and so on and so forth. And I said, well, I am. This is really important to me. I want to do it. I didn't tell him I was embarrassed, for this lady and everything. And he said, well, I have it was the push I saw people doing. There was 2 dances I saw that night I really liked. One of them was the, I guess they call it the nightclub 2-step or something like that. There's another name for it. I forget what it is. And then the push, people do the push, because I saw that when I met Patty, and I said, well, I want to learn that. He said, well, I have a lesson, not this coming Wednesday, but the next Wednesday at Parents Without Partners down on Harry Hines. He said, come see me. And so I went down there, and I went through the first class, and then the second class, and, once a week for a month. And in the last class of the month, he announced that they were having an intermediate class on Thursday, the following trying to get people to come out. And as we were leaving, I told him, I said, I'll see you next Thursday. And he said, no, you won't. What do you mean I won't? And he says, you're not ready. And I'm like, I did fine. He said, you did do fine, but you told me you wanted to be really good. And I said, I do. And he said, I'll see you next Wednesday for basics. So I went through that little scenario with him for 4 straight months. And the last night of the basics, the last of the 4 months, he says, all right, I've got a pattern that's coming Thursday. I need you to come out. And basically what it was a whip with an arm lock whip, roll them out, and then up and around the neck and whatnot. And
got to be careful not to strangle her, yeah.
Yeah. And so I went through the class like a hot knife through butter. I mean, went right through it. And after the class, I see you next Thursday. He says, no, I need you back in the basics. What I didn't realize at the time, if you knew Jim Bunch, and if he liked you, he'd take you under his wing. And that's basically what he's doing with me. What he was doing in the basics, he was teaching me how to dance, lead.
Not just learn steps.
Not just learn steps, not just learn patterns, but understand rhythm and timings, and most importantly, a lead. And so in the mechanics of dance, if you will.
Well, what made you keep going, even though he kept saying, no, you're not ready, you got to come?
Well, he pissed me off. It was a challenge,
Yeah, at that point, you're just stubborn. I'm like, no.
I'm going to do this. And so I did 1 more month of basics with him, and then I went to his intermediate class. And that's where he taught me that the difference between a basic pattern and an intermediate pattern was 2 basic patterns torn in half, put together, which made an intermediate, if you will. And since I'd been through so many basics, I was no longer thinking about footwork. I was thinking about the pattern itself and the mechanics of the pattern. And being a mechanical engineer by education, an industrial engineer by education, it just kind of clicked for me real well. I always felt good about music, but I never took the time to learn to dance other than belly rubbing to slow songs, which was fun. It's like, hi, what's your name?
It gets your interest up, sure.
What is it? Do you want to go to Denny's? But back in those days.
In the morning.
What about the rodeo?
The rodeo is where I met Patty that had an interest.
It was Rodeo Exchange.
Rodeo Exchange? Well,
no, it wasn't Rodeo Exchange.
That's
The Fort Worth Fat Stock Show Rodeo was where we were headed.
I see.
And we stopped off at a push competition because his date wanted to stop and we had some time to kill.
Where did you learn double 2-step, per se?
Initially, I learned the traditional double 2 from Rayburn and Mary Wright. And they're at Nowarbah, Texas. And I think I took 2 lessons with them for that. And I took a lesson in 2-step with them. And I was off and running, meeting the girls and dancing and having a good time.
About dancing and meeting girls.
Oh yeah, it was all about the women. It had nothing to do with learning to dance. It was all about meeting the girls.
That's
right.
I'm
just kidding. But Jim Bunch.
Only 20% about it. He's kidding. Yeah.
So Jim put me into the dance mind frame of how to do it, and I started growing really fast. A lady named Betty out of Terry Ripa's class asked me to compete with her, and we did a city competition. I think we won somewhere between 3rd and 5th. I know we didn't do all that well. And then I met Diane Young, who is Diane Robert today. And Diane and I started competing together, and we won everything we got in. City, state, regionals. We were new dancers. I've been competing a little over a year, and we won 4th in the U.S. Open.
And this was
in California.
push.
Yeah. Swing, push,
Oh,
whatever it
or-
is. Yeah, I called it push.
Dallas push. They used to say Houston whip, right? Slightly different variation.
Right.
Same dance. West Coast
Exactly.
swing.
I'm sorry. There wasn't really no West Coast swing
No,
at
back in
that
those
time.
days, no.
I mean, a few people, like, I'm trying to think, can't think of, it'll come to me in a minute, the guy's name that,
Barry?
no, not Barry,
Mm-hmm.
but, oh my goodness, we'll come back to it in a minute. The Latin dancer.
Oh, I know who you're talking about.
Romero.
Yeah.
He,
Yes, he
because
was-
he went out to California so much. and
In
stuff.
New York.
Yes.
He was New York grown.
Yes.
So he brought that name back? 'Cause
Well,
Oh, no, it's a different dance.
it was a different dance.
And then I think we talked about this on a podcast before that we talked about push and West Coast swing. It's like the cousins. One's like the city mouse and one's the country mouse.
That's true. Basically, the history behind the push, it's a spin-off of the jitterbug / Lindy, if you will. The Lindy started doing more than just 6-beat patterns. And in Texas, there was a group of black individuals that took their version of the Lindy and they called it the push, if you will. And they expanded it to some 8-beat patterns with whips. And
I think originally it was North Texas.
yes, it was North Texas push out of Denton.
That's
up there.
right. At
And with that
College.
group of people, and it slowly came down south. And
Yeah, 35 is real slow that time of the year.
it was a two-lane highway,
Back
trust
in
me.
those days, yeah.
That's 35 years ago, 36 years. Well, when they did it, it was in the 50s.
Yeah,
It was
that
back in the 50s.
35, they still complain about that damn road, yeah.
But that I learned to push and I loved it and still do today. But there were two styles of push. One style was with a rock coaster to more traditional rhythm and blues, jazz music, and the other style was with a swing coaster with a faster, more modern. Because you couldn't do a rock step, you needed that triple ending to take off, that triple
To
coaster.
kind of fill the time.
And so I was I enjoyed and I competed on the traditional side of the house doing push, but this guy by the name of Gary Halbert, he was out of Dallas area and he created a dance club called Dancing More, and he imported another instructor. You may have talked to him. His name was Gary Long out of Tulsa, and Gary was the force behind Dancing More, and he was doing what they called an open style versus a traditional style. And that's with lifts and drops and costumes and all that stuff. And that appealed to me. And so Diane and I started competing, and we started winning and winning and winning. And for some reason, people thought if you could win and you were a competitor, you could teach. No.
Not necessarily.
That's a learning process all by itself.
That is another learning.
So-
Yep.
But I was really limited to two-step in country and some double two-step for country. And I wanted to learn more, and I got a little interest in ballroom, but not a lot, because I was told by one of her instructors at her studio that I was too masculine. But I wanted to learn some stuff. And since Trish was giving me these little introductory things in exchange for studio time for Diane and I to practice, she and I developed a relationship, and she taught me how to do waltz properly. Funny. The cha-cha.
Yes.
She taught me the forward shuffle.
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't know forward shuffle. And she taught me a little bit about dance principles. Because remember, I didn't know what I heard Grant Austin once said, first position, second position. I'm like, is that like quarterback and running back? But I didn't understand any of that lingo, but Trish...
Point guard, wait a minute.
Trish was teaching me a little bit about the fundamentals of ballroom dances that I was interested in doing, and I never really went ballroom, because like I said, I can't remember that gentleman's name, but he told me I was too masculine. He said, you'll do fine, you'll do great, and he said, I can use your money, but they're too masculine.
It was probably Jimmy, if I remember.
Yeah, it was.
Jimmy
It
Hanley,
was. Yes, it was.
Yeah.
And so I kind of gave that up. But based on that information, I was off and running. But I wasn't teaching yet. There's a doctor down in Corsicana, Texas. His name is Joe Glicksman, Dr. Glicksman. and at the Corsicana Country Club, not dance club, golf club. And he was heavy driving to Dallas doing push and stuff, so he hired a local instructor out of Dallas here to go down and teach. And I won't say what the guy's name was, but he had a propensity to piss people off. And
one of those
talk
guys.
down to the guys, you know who I'm talking about.
Of course I do.
And so Joe couldn't do that because all these highfalutin people in this country club didn't tolerate this guy at all. And so he hired another instructor, which you will recognize when I say what he does, but he would pay him a lot of money, he wouldn't show up, or he'd show up drunk or high. So we know who that is.
Mm-hmm.
And so they weren't having a lot of luck with these, and Joe called me and he says, "Will you teach for me?" And I'm like, "What?" He said, "Push." And I said, "Well, I'm not an instructor." He said, "Well, I've seen you dance, I'm sure you can." And so by that time, I owned a home down off of Inwood, and down near the airport, Love Field, and it had a 5-car garage that I converted into a dance floor. I put a floating dance floor with mirrors on the walls and air conditioning and everything. And but that was for competition training, for Diane and I to do, because I couldn't continue to barter for studio time and go to these little nightclubs that you'd go in there with your boom box and you're practicing, somebody cranks up to the jukebox. So anyway, I converted my garage. And so Jim Bunch was my roommate, him and Jeff Roman. And Jeff Roman was a 2-step competitor out of Houston that moved to Dallas. And so you know where that's going with that part of it. But Jimmy being my roommate, he had some videotapes and instruction tapes. And so what I would do, I would study his tapes, his sugar push, and then that's the basic, and then maybe a side pass or something like that, and I'd go to Corsicana and I'd teach it. And then I'd watch the thing the next week, I'd go to Corsicana and teach it. I did that for like 2 months, and I was at Borrowed Money one night, a real popular country club, and Randy Clements and my dance partner Diane were teaching push there. And Randy and the manager got into a conflict, and Randy walked out, and they didn't have an instructor. Well, the DJ, I drank a few beers with him over at nowhere but Texas. Now he's DJing at Borrowed Money, and he knew I was teaching at Corsicana. So he told the manager, that gray-headed guy over there, 25 years ago I was still all gray, and said, that guy over there, he teaches push. And so the manager came up and said, are you interested? And I'm like, I guess. And so I started teaching. And then people started complaining, only push. They wanted 2-step, and they wanted line dancing. And I'm like, I know about this much 2-step, and I know no line dancing. So I went over to Anita Williams. I don't know if you remember Anita or not, but I went over to Anita Williams' class. She was teaching at Cowboys.
Cowboys, the original Cowboys.
Yeah, the original. And so I went over there to learn some line dancing, and my roommate Jeff taught me the more, I'll call it progressive style of 2-step. In other words, not step, touch, walk kind of thing. It was a toes passing.
Quick, slow.
Cruising around the dance floor doing the 2-step with the 1 and 2, 3 and 4.
That's the Houston style, I call it sometimes too,
1 and 2, 3, 4 and 5, 6, whatever it was. And Houston style, because that's where he was from. So with that, and then her line dancing, I started teaching that. So I was teaching Tuesday nights progressive and Thursday nights line dancing 2-step.
Wait, you said progressive.
Well, I didn't mean to. I was teaching push. And,
get the story right, JJ. Come on.
But in the
just follow the cue cards.
meantime, in the meantime, I was at a push competition in St. Louis, Missouri. Diane and I were up there with my infamous winning stunt that I did. That you might remember, a face fall. You're arm to arm, and she falls forward. You bring her around, and she spins with her feet, and then she goes to a position where her feet came around and hit my feet, and I did a flip on the floor, landed on my knees, and I went to an ending position, and we won the contest.
And you were never able to do that move again.
And that was in all the videos you could ever believe, So I became famous for the guy that does flips, and people expected to see him in the future, and it wasn't going to happen. But after the competition at night, it was about 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning, we all went to breakfast. And I was having breakfast with Carrie Lucas, Debbie Ramsey. You might remember Debbie's name. She was big on the ballroom scene and everything. Debbie Ramsey, Alan, little short guy from St. Louis, and his partner, Sherry, redheaded girl. They changed positions. She would lead, he'd follow, he'd lead, and she'd follow. But they won a lot of contests.
Right.
We were all sitting there talking and stuff like that, and the subject of country came around because we'd during breaks, Diane and I would do country. And I said, yeah, but it's so boring. You know, the double two-step, you know, it's like I'm doing the drive and using her bumpers, going, bump them out of the way, get them out of the way kind of thing. And I said, there's got to be something better than just the two-step or the double two-step. Two-step's been around forever, and it will be around forever, I said, because that's the backbone, if you will. But we need something better. And they said, well, create one. And I'm like, how? But it was in my mind. And so I started with Julie Prudhomme.
So what you're getting into essentially is the beginning of progressive country.
Exactly.
Okay.
And Julie Prudhomme and I were working a little bit and trying to take, since I hadn't had any formal training, the only patterns I knew, because I really didn't know double two and two-step, the only patterns I knew were push patterns. So how am I going to put these push patterns in this dance? And so I tried the three-step count. The slow, quick, or quick, slow, I guess it was. And I didn't know numbers then. I wasn't that educated in instruction. And
well, not in dance anyway.
And the double two was 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. So I didn't know it was 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But anyway, so we tried it with the two-step count, and it didn't work very well doing the patterns that I wanted to do. And we tried with the double two, and it was a little better. But I found that dancing the traditional double two with the lady in the front and me leading her, and every time I wanted to do a pattern, I had to move her out of the way. Or, I'm sorry, dance terms, lead her out of the way to do a man under or anything, any of the patterns. She was always in my way, so I had to get her out of my way. And eventually, we gave up. And a little bit later, I thought about it in my head, and I think Sarah,
how can I get this woman out of the way?
Yeah, the blonde lady that hung out with Julie, she and I worked together one night, and I figured out that with the push patterns back in those days, the solid push was a slot dance. Mm-hmm. Man moved from left to right, lady moved forward and reverse. You go up and come back. And so what I wanted to do was every time I would get her in a position to do a pattern, where were we? We were here in the slot. And it started working. So I'm like, well, how am I going to maintain this slot? And that's where the hold came in. The traditional way, I'm constantly doing one of these numbers. Her arm's over mine, over here, and mine is where is it? On her right shoulder blade kind of thing, or left shoulder blade, in the traditional hold with the friction and everything there. I don't have those terms. And she kept collapsing and coming forward, and my arms collapsing, coming forward, but she's still dancing in reverse. And when she would do spins, she had to spin with these patterns. Was very difficult. She's coming out dancing in reverse, so she'd have to chop up her footwork and stuff. But I learned if we could maintain this position, and so playing around, I put my arm up over the top of her back and grabbed her right shoulder blade. She took her left arm and put it behind my back, around my belt line, left arm out, palm flat, her right arm here, a little resistance for one another. Now I've got that cross-lock position. So that's when I kept the double two count, and I created the 1 and 2 in the left wing of the V, the 3 and 4 in the right wing of the V, bringing her back around forward 5, 6 with my right foot slanted. If I close my feet, I'm right back in that original position. So we had that basic left V, right V, forward slant.
Like an engineer.
Engineered. Solve a problem.
And
that's what we do.
The position famously was, you kept referring to this over and over in all your videotapes, is the cross-slot body position.
Right.
So you created two slots.
Which has been a big question of yours, this cross-slot body position.
Well, I just because I want people to know where it originated.
Sure.
So you essentially created, instead of just one slot in push,
right,
two that go at essentially 45-degree angles to the line of dance.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. We begin in this cross slot, my left hand pointed forward, her right hand pointed forward down the line of the dance. One of the things I found was that when we would try to do push patterns, we would stop. Well, that broke the rhythm of the dance. So I had to create some different footwork. So the man had 3 sets of footwork. The forward basic, I just explained, and then the right turn. And with him going across and then her coming around, and we opening back up, maintaining this V at the same time, and we were out of control doing it. It's like State Fair of Texas ride. We came around back to that cross-slot body position and foot position. And then I learned, well, if I move down the dance line while I'm doing my side to other side in that right turn, and and then she does her side to the other side, and then we come back to the slot position on the 5-6. Guess what? It worked. So I got my forward basic and I got my right turn. And we found that this is where the progressive name came from, is that if I designed the patterns and we did the patterns, if we would move forward, like a forward basic was like 20 feet, not 10 feet, 5 feet. I mean, we were cruising. And then I had to come up with a pattern to get into what we call a man under, or the man's left direction, if you will, footwork, which would be the man under footwork. So the guy, essentially in progressive, no matter how complicated it is, only had 3 sets of footwork. The forward basic, the right turn, and the man under footwork. Okay. Now the lady had 5, bless their hearts.
And wearing heels. Come on.
But one of the things I learned was, and this kind of started rolling into instruction that I learned from people like Trish here and some other people talking, looking down the dance line kept us moving down the dance line. And before you know it, just doing a forward basic and right turns, only just turn after turn after turn without coming back to a basic. It was like being on skates, just cruising around the floor. But to come back to that position in some kind of control and not over rotating, I learned that we both need to look down the dance line. As I'm doing my right turn, I'm looking down the dance line. As I turn to do let her do her side to the other side, I'd turn and look like spotting, if you will. And I'd come around, that ball brought my body around smooth, her body around smooth, back to the cross-lock position. And anytime we would go under, but we were constantly looking down the dance line. If you look at my videotapes, that's what I'm preaching the entire time, is looking down the dance line, traveling down the dance line. And what I learned was, just as in push, with push you can do a basic, what we call a sugar push pattern, and then we could do 3, 4, 5, 8, 10, 12, 20 patterns without coming back to a basic, if you know the patterns. Well, I could do the same thing in progressive. I found that I could take all the patterns I knew and apply them, moving down and around the dance floor. So, to move forward with this conversation, Diane and I would do that dance at borrowed money between teaching sets. And Julie and I would do it. And Sherry Leisner, nowadays, I forget what her last name was back then, the different ladies that helped me teach.
So people would see it.
Yes. Well, it wasn't the reason. It's just what we enjoyed doing. I was creating something not for the public. I was creating something that I enjoyed at the time. And this young lady was involved in it. And
so, just as an aside, since you mentioned that, how was she involved?
Well, initially, she was teaching me ballroom dancing to get me studio time. And then when I started teaching, not for a living at that time, but when I started teaching, I needed other dances to offer. And she taught me, like I said, the cha-cha, forward shuffle, and waltz.
I remember those three for sure.
So I'd go to Trish, and she'd give me a pattern, and I'd go to the floor, and I would teach it, whatever. In my 2-step night at Borrowed Money. So I would get the information from Trish to go do that. Okay. So we were moving forward, with that, and she helped me with some push and stuff. And it started to grow. Well, I started, people wanted to do progressive. They saw us doing it, they wanted to do it. So Borrowed Money gave me an additional night. Now I'm doing 3 nights. I'm doing a push night, a 2-step line dance night, and a progressive night. And the progressive classes started overflowing to the point that the classes got so big I'd have to go out on the dance floor and say, all right, everybody from here, there, sit down. These guys stay up, and I'd show them how to do it. Then they'd sit down, and I'd show them how to do it, then we'd let them do. I was on this dance floor, I had anywhere from 50 to 75 to 100 couples.
Wow.
Wow.
And it was really growing. And I was making a lot of money because Borrowed Money was splitting the door with me. At that time, we were charging $3 a head, and we moved to $5 a head. And before you know it, teaching 3 nights a week, and then Borrowed Money owner also owned Crystal Chandelier. So I went down there and taught for a night. And next thing you know, I'm teaching 4 nights, 5 nights a week. I'm knocking down, $2,500 a week and stuff like that. And so I quit my engineering job and started teaching. Well, when we would have like Dallas Dance, for example, push competition, Diane and I would dance in that. But during the breaks and stuff, we would do progressive. Because you could do progressive to swing music just as easy as you can country music, depending upon the tempo. And people saw that, and there was a couple out of Chicago, Illinois, and they came up to us and said, wow, what is it? And I said, it's swing on the move. I wouldn't call it progressive yet. It was swing on the move.
Oh, that's another thing. You initially called it swing on the move.
Yeah. Catherine Cannon called it that.
And that gave you the idea to use that term.
Yes.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. Before you get completely off that,
okay.
When I first started dancing, One of my very first memories is coming to Borrowed Money and seeing you teaching and seeing this huge group of people. And he was like this god out there because he was tall with this flowing white hair and.
What'd you call those back in those days? Those were
the
short
mullet.
on top.
The mullet.
Yeah, mullet.
Wow.
Well, you had a spectacular mullet. And, boy, I mean,
Mullet envy.
Wow, that's scary.
so I lived so far away. I ended up frequenting another club, but that was one of my first memories. It was very impressive. So
Wow.
I'm not surprised, at the success. That was good.
But one of the U.S. Opens that Diane and I danced in, I had a lady come up to me, and she was the publisher of the Dance Action magazine, and I brought some here. And she says, "What is that?" And I said, "Well, it's push patterns, Texas push patterns, kind of country style, if you will." And she said, "Well, demonstrate it." And so we got over next to the bandstand, and we went this way and turned around and came this way. She says, "So basically you're doing swing on the move." I'm like, "Yeah." There it was born. And when I came back to Texas, we started calling it swing on the move, and then teaching it in a country western club. Swing on the move wasn't all that cool, and since we moved down the dance line progressively, I started calling it progressive country, not progressive double two,
Right.
progressive. Somebody else came up with that term, and it was off. And I'm going around the nation. I even went over to Europe for 3 weeks and taught progressive over there in push, and coast to coast. And I've got a tub over there that's full of flyers from all over the nation teaching progressive, because I go to these country competitions, and Diane and I. And back in those days, Teresa was coming on board because Diane wanted to have kids.
Yes.
And so Teresa...
Kids always getting in the way, aren't they?
Yeah.
Amen.
Teresa O'Brien started traveling with me. We were doing exhibitions and judging competition. And I was teaching progressive classes and selling videos out the gazoo. And
life was good.
yeah. We were having fun. I was doing dance 7 days a week, 12 to 16 hours a day. I was young back then. I could do that kind of stuff. But... it was fun. And that's kind of where it began, having breakfast with some friends saying that two-step and double two in country. I wasn't crazy about doing country because it was so boring, and that's how I came about it.
Engineers, man, we solve problems.
That's it.
Wow. Well, that's certainly interesting.
You're getting all your questions
I'm
answered.
getting all my questions answered, checking all this stuff off. That's fantastic. So, who were the other original instructors of this dance beyond you?
None.
That's kind of what answer I thought you were going to give me on that. Yeah.
What the problem was is that I don't know if it was... No, that's not true. If you're talking about nightclub instructors, because this instructor here taught progressive the right way. She taught it like it was supposed to be taught.
So there is
With the progressive disciplines. To me, I'm a little sensitive about this, but to me, if I went and tried to change the disciplines of Foxtrot, I'd get run out of the business.
Yeah.
You have certain disciplines that dictates the dance. Like two-step isn't really two steps. It depends on, like 1, 2, 1, 2, step, or step, touch, or this count or that count or whatever. So the name of the dance doesn't dictate the rhythm, if you will, to the dance. And so some of the instructors in town at that time, actually there was only one, and that was Gary. Mm-hmm. And
Gary
when I first started teaching at Borrowed Money, I taught at Borrowed Money for about a year, and he was teaching at Bell Star, and he was teaching push. And then when Bell Star, they had those shootings and stuff, they closed it down, and so Gary went to Stampede, and he was teaching push initially. And then he would send his lieutenants, as he called them, over to my classes, my intermediate advanced classes, and learn patterns and go back, show him, and then he would teach them. But what Gary never put with that was the disciplines of progressive, what separates. So he still held the ladies' traditional style, kind of like you do, traditional style, which meant that they can only do 1 to 2 patterns, and they have to come back to a basic. If not, it becomes a wrestling match and out of control. The disciplines of progressive, actual progressive, true progressive, allows you to do lots and lots and lots of patterns without having to come back to a basic. So Gary started teaching it at Stampede, and it was a long time before anybody else. I think Steve Giles came on board and he started
he
teaching
did.
it somewhere. I think Midnight Rodeo or something like that.
Right.
Somewhere. And then I think he went to Borrowed Money. When I left Borrowed Money and went to Wild West. 'Cause
Right.
They paid a lot more money. And besides, it was behind our studio. She and I opened a studio together.
Oh,
You
And,
and Tricia?
Yeah. And on our out back door was Wild West. So I'd go over there and I'd generate 200, 300 people in my classes, sometimes more than that. And then at the end of my basic class, because you can't teach intermediate advanced, well, you can, but you can't. You can show them and let them just wrestle. But I would announce
Right.
intermediate or advanced classes, and everybody get their stamp on their hand.
Right.
And we'd go out the door, my back door of my studio, and we'd go over and teach an advanced class. We'd knock off some cash, and then they'd go back and have their hand stamped to get back in the club. But
wicked smart.
but at
Sure.
that time,
Gotta go practice.
there still weren't that many people teaching progressive other than Trish and myself. And I can't think of any other instructors who were teaching it the right way.
Not at that time. We later on, like Gene came along.
Well, Gene was one of my
later.
students.
Yeah,
Gene
that's what I
was
said. We had some
addicted.
yes, we had some students that later Pepper later on.
yeah.
We had some students that later on down the line, after we'd kind of sort of retired,
Right.
kind of wanted to carry the torch a little bit.
Yeah.
But at the time, there really wasn't that many.
No, it's just me, and it used to hurt my feelings because when other people did start teaching it, they weren't using the disciplines of progressive. But I'd go to Chicago, and they're doing it the right way. I go to Calgary, Canada, they're doing it the right way. I go to LA, they're doing it the right way. They learned this way, and they respected the disciplines. But here in the Dallas, where the dance was born, I had people modifying it and calling it progressive. The reason they were calling it progressive because that's the dance everybody wanted to learn. It was popular, and it was money involved with progressive.
You
So
know-
they just didn't take the time to learn the.
I had an interesting thing happen. I had a couple who literally came down here from the Chicago area, I think. And he said, teach us some new progressive country patterns. We've had JJ's tapes for years. We know almost all of the, and I said, okay, dancing. I was like watching your video. And it was like, wow, okay. And they stayed in town about a week, and they took maybe 5 hours of lessons from me to kind of learn some new stuff. But that's still out there.
Yeah, I know. I was in Colorado, Denver, Colorado, teaching to the Texas prison systems. On the side, I teach, but not dance. I teach OSHA, if you're familiar with OSHA.
Sure.
Occupational Safety and Health. I train OSHA professionals and safety professionals part-time through the University of Texas.
But
And
progressive or
No. Teaching the safety rules, if you will. I work anywhere from 1 to 2, sometimes 3 weeks a month, mostly 2 weeks a month. But I was up there, and I went into a nightclub one night down the street from the hotel where I was doing it, and they were doing progressive. And better than people in Dallas. And I'm thinking, wow.
Now this was
But-
in Denver? You
Yeah,
said? Yeah.
it was at the Wolverine.
At the Wolverine.
Yeah. And
That's fine.
I ran into it at the Grizzly Rose years ago,
yeah.
and I was like, hey,
Grizzly Rose.
yeah.
back in those days, and Trish and I, mostly Trish, we put together a exhibition team, progressive,
Yes.
and with some waltz.
Yes.
And
Roughly what
I forget
year?
What else was it?
That was-
87, 89, 90, somewhere around
Yeah,
there.
probably 89.
Yeah.
88, 89.
Somewhere
Yeah.
there, yeah. And we went out and we were on a TV show called
Yes,
The White Horse
the
Saloon.
White Horse Saloon, yes.
And it was a real favorite TV show nationally.
Now, that was probably 1990 when we went to Tennessee.
Yeah.
No, but we started our studio, what, 88, 89?
I think so, 87,
Yeah,
somewhere
yeah,
around
somewhere up there. Because I know we were also teaching at Borrowed Money and Crystal Chandelier.
Yes, yeah.
And we would go back and forth between.
Yeah.
Sometimes we'd be together, sometimes we'd be separate because they'd want us both on the same night.
Yeah.
And but I think it was like 90 or 91 when we went to Tennessee and took that
We
team.
loaded up a bus of dancers,
Yeah.
and I flew out because I had a schedule. I had to be somewhere else. I think I had to be in Atlanta for the Peach State. or
Left
something.
me stuck
With
with
all
the-
those people, yeah.
Oh yeah, on the bus,
on a bus.
for 20 hours or whatever it was.
Well,
Yeah,
I heard it was a pretty good party, so I
It
missed the party.
was.
But I had to go to Peach State and teach. But through that national recognition, I could go in a grocery store in Pennsylvania and say, "You're that guy. You're that JJ guy." Okay. Airline pilots would come down. That's before all this stuff happened in 9/11. And they would come down because they'd been in my class and says, and we're in the aisle, I'm showing them a pattern in the aisle kind of stuff. And Teresa's the one that was bumping the chairs. I was just explaining it. She was having a dance with them in the aisle. But the dance grew really, really fast. And
It did.
I reached a point. I remember one night we had a meeting outside of Michael's studio, and I told everybody I'm bailing out, leaving, because from an emotional point of view, I was moving really, really fast. I never did drugs, and I don't drink very much. But from an emotional point of view, it was weighing on me because I had so many wonderful, great people come into my life, and we would develop some really great relationships, and then move on because there was life after dance. And I'm still there. So it's like, getting into a relationship with people, and then you go through not a breakup, but they go away, and it started affecting me emotionally. And at some time and point, I started winding down, and then eventually I walked away from it. Mm-hmm. So I could be married to a very, very wonderful person. This one could have been if she'd hung around. But
there's that whole leaving part.
But I was pretty wild and crazy back in those days. Not very trustworthy with the ladies, but
well, and honest.
But I started the political side of dance was enormous. Of all the egos you had to deal with, like our little dance team. Everybody wanted to be up front.
Oh my gosh, I know. But I do want to interject something real quick about how fast it was growing, and and how popular it was getting, and I was leaving the ballroom scene because they were so anti-country and western. They were giving me such a hard time for being involved in it, and to where I was like,
elitist.
I was already too
ballroom
old
people.
to be told what to do anymore. After my divorce, I was like, you're not telling me what to do anymore. And so I was kind of leaving the ballroom scene because of that, and having so much fun, us doing the progressive and pushing stuff. But what is so funny about that, it was the same person that actually told you, Jimmy, that owned the dance studio that I was at. Later on, we ended up being almost the star attraction at one of his showcases. You remember us doing that?
Yeah.
We brought our little team, and we did something. So how it got so popular that they had to recognize in the Dallas area that it was a viable dance, to the point that years later they actually asked me to come back and write a syllabus for a ballroom studio for it, and then invited us to do one of their showcases, which I think we got the most applause and the most feedback and stuff later. So I thought that was kind of funny, something that I was
very nice.
Forbidden
Yeah,
to
felt
do.
good.
When I got into it, then later, we were being summoned.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Trish played a very small but a very large part in progressive. She in and out different things, and but
JJ was brilliant in the way he would come up with things. Where the only thing I added to it was technique, since I was from the ballroom background, and
Which
Kind of
is a
polished
big
it up a
thing.
bit.
Which is technique is a big thing.
which is
That's
a big thing.
I didn't know
And,
what technique was.
and he would
It's called
say,
polish.
It's a
and,
little more than that.
and JJ
It's
would
a lot
come
more
to
than
me
that.
and he would go, this is what I've got in mind. This is what I want to do. And I would go, oh, I like that, but I think it would work a little better if we did it, just kind of add this little something. And what was so great is not only did he have all these ideas, but as soon as I would say, well, to me it feels a bit better this way or whatever, he had it.
But the
He
thing
had
about
it.
technique that's important in dancing is that what it does is it creates a consistency,
Sure.
so that you can have a high percentage of it going correctly.
It's called repetitive. It's like, hey,
Yeah,
you
so it's
do it
important.
right, it works.
It's important. So is that what you meant about the little thing that was the big thing?
Yeah, pretty much. I think another thing that separated my instruction from other instructors, other people were teaching patterns, and I was teaching people how to dance. What I mean by that,
Like
the
your
difference
original-
between good dancers and great dancers is how well they communicate with their leads.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And how well the ladies can communicate by following the leads. This whole thing, if you can lead, I can follow. That's not a true statement, trust me. And
It's like,
we
know.
know.
so I
We
got
know.
into
It is known.
it is known.
I concentrated on the little stuff that made a difference, and made me very, very popular because people come to my class, learn to lead and learn to dance, and then go to somebody else's class to get more patterns. And it was a lot of fun. I had a really, really good time. But I met a lady in my life that was just absolutely wonderful, and she was my best friend for like 3 years. Never dated, wasn't intimate or anything. She was a great person. I fell in love with her, and I walked away from dance.
When was this that you walked away?
1990.
What?
No.
No.
In 2000.
92.
We've been married 20 years. 20 years.
It's been 99.
Yes,
Yeah, okay,
99.
that
There
sounds
you
about
go.
right. Yeah.
And still very happily married.
Oh yeah. She has tolerated me all this time. I don't know how.
Well, that's
You better find a lady that will tolerate you.
She's
That's
up for
really-
sainthood, I heard. Yeah, so there you go.
She would be, yes. No, I think one of the things that was so interesting about our time together is JJ and I were good friends too. And, we shared a lot of stuff, and he tolerated my little ones running around the studio and all that stuff all the time. And we had fun. We had fun in the studio. We had fun when we were teaching together. We had fun when we were out dancing together. And we had a good friendship back during all that time.
Well, you're both very attractive people with attractive personalities, which never hurts.
Yeah, that works.
And so, it was kind of a confluence of a lot of good things that came together for you guys.
Planets aligning, all that sort of thing.
And so you started something that is very much still going.
And I think one of the good things, too, is if I ever had to, step in for him, which I did have to every once in a while at Crystal Chandelier borrowed money, he was confident that I was going to do it exactly the way he would have
Sure, it's
done
his
it.
baby.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I would always make sure that I didn't throw in something else that was whatever.
It was always fun at Borrowed Money or wherever we're teaching, whether it was Trish or Sherry or Terry Tacker or whoever it was that was helping me. That asked me, "What are we going to do tonight?" And I'm like, "I don't know."
Exactly.
Boy, I know that one.
And so we'd go out and we'd dance push for a few minutes, and I'd do a pattern and say, "Right, that's it."
Yeah,
That's what we're doing.
So I'd go out, and in my mind, I would take that pattern and create it during the class that night. And
That's pretty good.
Yeah,
To have that kind of talent.
all you have to do
a lot.
is explain. Yeah, you have to explain what you're doing, and then from teaching the ladies footwork, I just have to pay attention to what she's doing while I'm doing all this piece. And then I would explain the ladies footwork. As a matter of fact, in one of these magazines here, one person that wrote an article took a shot at me because it said that I treated my assistants like mannequins because they didn't teach. They didn't help teach. I did all the teaching. Now, I would turn to them every now and then, and I would ask for a little bit of input, but you can't have two people in the same line of thought, because if, I turn to Teresa every now and then, and Teresa would start off on over here, and I'm like, I'm still over here, kind of stuff. And so I did all the instruction, other than when sometimes we'd separate, and the ladies would take the ladies over here, and I'd keep the guys over here, kind of
It
thing.
can be kind of hard when you have two instructors and they're both doing talking, and then they can start kind of talking over each other, and that's a lot for a student's ears
It
to
is. It's
handle.
really better just to have one instructor.
One main,
Absolutely.
One voice to listen to.
I mean, it's great to have the person there to demonstrate visually the man and the woman dancing it together, of course. But yeah, I think it's important. I prefer that. Like, if let's say I were in a situation of being a student, to have that, one main person, and then when asked, some really good input. I think it's helpful for the students. I think.
For the historical record, we've been talking about we've been talking about a lot of places that used to exist here in the metro area. Just so people will be able to reference them or kind of have some idea. So, according to D Magazine in 1999, there was Billy Bob's in Fort Worth, Top Rail, Northwest Highway near I-35 in Dallas, Borrowed Money, which was at Central and Park in Dallas, Nowhere But Texas, which was off Central Expressway in Dallas, Bell Star, also off Central Expressway in Dallas, Longhorn Ballroom down in the, let's say Corinth and Industrial in Dallas, the Crystal Chandelier in Lancaster, and Cowboys on Gaston. And so we had a ton of places. And then a few years later, in '92, D Magazine '92, there was by that time there had also come along Stampedes near Preston, close to where we are now in Dallas. Lee's Silver Fox in Terrell, Good Luck Rodeo in Louisville, and Chances in Central Walnut Hill. See, all that stuff.
But there aren't hardly any left over out in Louisville. You have Good Luck Rodeo.
Electric Cowboy, but that's just 10 years old, so that only started in.
But none of the others are around anymore. None of them.
No.
They're all gone.
We're the only thing left. We're it.
Wow.
Outlasted the clubs. Look at that.
Yeah.
But it was a big thing, and I just want to make sure everybody understands. I mean, these guys were a big deal in a big market, very popular, very hot thing, which is still.
They're dancing on an airplane holiday with a pilot, no less.
That's a good story.
That's a great story. You can't put a price tag on that.
I was told once that I was a very large fish in a very small pond.
All right, well, this is
nowadays I run into people. You know, Deb and I don't dance. My wife, she dances. She enjoys dancing, but we didn't get together to dance. We got together to have life after dance. And we go out every now and then to friends' birthday parties and stuff, and we'll go somewhere and someone come over and, "You're a J.J. Jackson?" I'm like, "Oh, shit."
There we
You
go.
created that dance? I said, "No, I created something with
Similar.
that dance name, similar to that." And I had to learn, don't try to explain to them the difference, you know, because that instructor out there doesn't have a clue what progressive is, but they know people like to learn progressive, if you will. Unfortunately, students don't know when they're getting bad instruction, you know.
Well, that's why they're students. They don't know yet.
That's right. They don't know enough to know that you're full of it, you know, kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, that is so true. That is so true.
But Garth Brooks was almost bred a little, it gave us a little life back into dance, because we were going a long time and dance died, and then Garth Brooks came around with Young Country, and it kicked up again for a little while, and then it started going down. And I guess the last place I taught dance was Top Rail, and I was there, 6 years, something like that. And I passed my business off and gave it to Gene Villarreal, and he's at Red River, I think now. Yeah. And I gave him my microphones, my music, and everything. I said, "Here, it's yours." And my wife
Knock yourself out.
went away. Yeah.
Wow.
All right,
Something else that wasn't
Oh,
on
here we
your
go.
list. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
Southern Junction.
Yeah, Southern Junction.
When you said Garth Brooks,
Oh.
I happen to think, because I happened to be teaching out at Southern Junction
Rockwall.
one time in
Yeah.
Rockwall when he was going to be appearing like that next week, that same weekend or something. And I was like, oh, that wasn't on your list.
And they're still here.
And they're still around. They're the only ones that's still around.
You want to hear something that's really cool about that? I took my two-step and my double two-step couple of lessons from Rayburn and Mary Wright in No Orbit, Texas, 30-something years ago. And they're still teaching at Southern Junction.
You're kidding.
No, he's in his 80s.
Wow.
They
Wow.
do 1 out of a
There's
year.
hope for us.
Yeah, there is.
Oh,
There is.
okay.
Yeah. Keep those legs
They
young.
barely walk, but they still teach some line dancing out
Oh, that's hilarious.
there. Isn't that great?
That's great.
Unless they left. Last I heard, they were still there.
I heard that they had left.
Oh, really?
I think.
So they went for a long time.
Can't,
Yeah.
long
Yeah.
time.
They're 80 years old. Yeah, that's a long one.
In fact, I wasn't going to mention this on mic, but it was just interesting that their son came to me. He was getting married, and they wanted some wedding lessons. And so I know their son.
Nice.
And I don't know that I've ever met them, but I've heard their name for years and years and years. You know, and so I have met their son.
Oh, my goodness.
Isn't that crazy?
All right, kids. We could sit there and go down memory lane here all day.
Yes.
But,
I know. We
we're gonna
have
have to
a
get
lot of
going.
memory to go through.
Well, and you did a great job of all that stuff.
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
terrific.
that was actually I really enjoyed that whole tale, man. That was
Yes.
the whole history
Good
bit of that.
story.
That was a real good story.
It was a fun
Double
time
G.
in my life, but at some time and point, you got to grow up
Yeah, well,
and discover
that-
there is life after
He
death.
resisted.
There
He
really is. I
resisted,
did.
but-
I did.
there is that thing. Life getting in the way. Damn it.
Met some wonderful people along the way. Lots of movie stars and lots of local people and everything. And I met some really bad people along the way.
Yeah.
Movie stars and local people.
Right.
Well, you met a lot of people.
Well, officially now, Joe Jackson, is it?
Joe Jackson.
Joe Jackson.
JJ, thank you, sir, for showing up today and giving us this, well, history lesson, for lack of a better word.
Yeah,
Certainly
very
a
interesting.
walk down memory lane there. That was real nice.
Yeah, thank you so
My
much.
pleasure. I thank you for inviting me to share the information.
You're a good storyteller, so it's easy to listen.
I hope that progressive is around for a very long time. Anyway, they teach it.
I think it will be.
But
Pretty sure they will.
Surprisingly so.
Jim Weber's doing a good job with it.
Yes,
it
yes.
was a high point in my life for about 25 years or so. And it was
Very
good.
well.
It was
The
good.
lovely
no,
Trish.
No regrets. I
Sir.
met my wife through there. She was one of my students, and she did not like me.
That's how you knew it was a mortal lock.
Yeah, she came over and she wanted me to show her how to do something. I said, no, you need to come to my Wednesday night class. Those are basics. And she's like, was offended because I told her she needed to go to basics.
Sounds familiar? All right.
Mr. Jim Weber, did
Mr.
you get
Jim
your
Weber.
questions answered?
I am good. Yes, I
You
did.
can sleep now.
Yes.
Like I said, let the man talk, and the next thing he's just ticking them off.
This
I know.
little,
Got
this
that
little
Nice.
quest. I've had this little quest for a couple years now. It's-
Really?
Yes,
Well, I'm
because
glad-
I've just been interested in the history of all of this, and it's been fascinating.
Well, I'm glad we were able to bring it to fruition for you.
So thank you guys, man. You and Jose.
Yes, thank you.
These podcasts are terrific. I mean, for anybody who's interested, I don't know who's interested, but there's bound to be some people. These are fantastic.
You're not
Absolutely.
the only one,
Jim.
right?
Okay.
All right. The lovely May.
Jose, thank you so much.
All right, kids. Well, we're going to have to get on out of here. Folks, this has been another episode of Dance Teachers Academy. Thank you for watching.